Hello and welcome back everyone. This is Gina from McGuire and I'm thankful you're here. Today I have another gel press video for you. Now I promise not to do too many of these in the future, but I was getting a lot of questions on if you could use gel press with dye ink, and today I wanted to show you how I like to do it. I also have a fun gel press lift technique that allows you to create two cards at once, one that's bold and one that's softer. Now, I'm on a mission this year to share lots of techniques that work well with stamps and products you already have, and this is definitely one. All you need is a gel press and then any stamps and any dye inks. So I'm going to start by showing you a few different examples of the backgrounds that I created, and then I'll show you the completed cards. Before I get started, I thought I would mention that yes, the cuffs on my shirt look terrible. That is because I was having a bad day. And when I have a bad day, I like to pull out an old t-shirt that I love. And this happens to be from a Billy Joel concert when I was in high school. Anyways, here is my gel press. I will link below to the one that I like to use. It's 5x7, but any gel press size would work for this. Today I'll be using dye inks, mostly Gina K inks, just because I'm comfortable with her ink and I really like the colors. Now, I have heard rumors that dye ink can stain a gel press, but I didn't have that occur today, but that's something to keep in mind and I felt I should mention. If you're new to a gel press and you want to learn the basics, I will link here to kind of an intro to gel press for card making video. Up here on the top right, I highly encourage you to watch that because today I'm just really focusing on using it with dye ink and not really the basics of the gel press. I also have some Brayers. These are from Tim Holtz. I really like this Brayer in particular because it's the right amount of firmness to apply ink well onto a gel press. And then I have a bunch of white cardstock ready to go. You should be able to use any white paper you have. Now for most of my cards today, I'll be using something from the Gina K Designs Forever Flowers kit. I like to use her kits and videos because the value is really strong. So you get a lot in here. You have two large 6x8 stamp sets, a regular 4x6 stamp set, coordinating dies, and then there are those layering dies for the word forever and birthday. There's also cardstock included. When I look at kits value, I consider how much of it can be used over and over again. Everything besides the cardstock here can be used over and over. So that is a really good value to me. I will be using all three stamp sets in this today and also the Forever die. Check that out. Probably my favorite die of the year. You've got the word and the shadow die. Keep in mind there is the word birthday in the shadow die included also. I didn't use that today, but you could definitely use it on any of the card techniques that I show. Now here is a close look at one of the 6x8 stamp sets in this kit. It's definitely my favorite in the kit, and it is a fantastic stamp set. Great for techniques such as the one we're doing today. So I'm using that large floral image on the bottom. Now the first step with the gel press lift technique is to do heat embossing. So I have a piece of white cardstock in my MISTI stamping tool. You could definitely use an acrylic block if you prefer. And I'm stamping the large floral image with VersaMark Ink. I'll stamp that and then I will add white embossing powder. I'm using a half sheet of cardstock here because that way I have plenty of room to use the 5x7 gel press on top of this once we're done heat embossing. I went ahead and heat embossed several of the images so they're all ready to go for the technique. Now I'll be using my gel press inside of my MISTI stamping tool today. I talked about this in a previous video, which I'll link to in the top right, and it really does work well. It is a bit thicker than the MISTI, so keep that in mind. You could always instead use your gel press on your desk and just use it the traditional way. If you're interested in knowing how that works, I will link to that video, my beginner video, so you can see that. But what I've done here is take out the foam from my MISTI, and in there is the white cardstock piece where I white heat embossed one of those floral images. Now I'm taking Gina K Designs ink. This is turquoise sea and grass green, and I'm inking up half and half. I will then take my brayer and start on one end hanging off, and then just continue to roll it across my gel press, slowly moving towards the top, and I'll continue until I'm hanging off the top up there too. This allows those colors to kind of blend, and I usually go from light to dark. So in this case, my turquoise sea is a little bit lighter, so I started down there and worked my way up. Now the first impression will be just okay, don't worry, we'll build on it. Now I'm putting in a second piece of white cardstock with nothing on it, no heat embossing, just plain, and stamp the excess ink off onto that. And look at, you get a light ghost image. But what we're going to do here is build up more layers so we can intensify these colors and give a smooth look. So I'll repeat the same process. I like to wipe my gel press clean and then start fresh. So again, I'm putting the turquoise sea on the bottom, and then I'll put the grass green on the top. I'll take my brayer, have it hanging off the bottom there, and slowly continue to roll from the right to the left. That's what works for me. And continue to work my way up the gel press. Be sure to go over the same area a few times as you saw me do. Don't just do like 3 rolls across. The more you do, the more blending that you get. Now I'll move in that same piece of white cardstock where I did the excess ink before and build another layer of it. And now that's starting to intensify, and it's such a beautiful look. So let's repeat this. I wanted more of the turquoise sea. I wanted more turquoise to show up. So I'm putting down turquoise sea over the whole gel press, and I'll do that same brayer effect. This time I start at the top. It really doesn't matter, but usually you want to go from lighter to darker with your inks, but in this case, it's just one ink, so it didn't matter. That just kind of smooths the ink out, keeps it from being too splotchy, and I'll stamp this, and look how beautiful that's starting to look. Again, I'll put in that second print and stamp that down. So this is starting to get darker each time we do it. And it has this beautiful soft background to it. So what's happening is when we do the gel press onto the heat emboss piece, the ink is kind of stained behind instead of sticking to the heat embossing, stained behind on the gel press. So when we come in with that second piece of plain white cardstock, that excess ink will transfer to the white cardstock, leaving that image. I've paused this here because I really want you to see how intense that ink color is on the left. It looks very different than if you did ink blending. It is smooth. It almost looks like that's printed color on white cardstock. It is amazing. And then the other one on the right is very soft. You have soft color in the background, and then the image that's multicolor in the middle. Such a cool technique and great for 2-for-1 cards. All right, let's do another example, but this time use a stamp set with lots of detail. Now there are 2 stamp sets here. First on the right is the daffodil stamp set that I'll be using on this card. It is from the Forever Flowers kit that I showed you earlier. Then here on the left, we have the tulip stamp set. I'm not using the tulips on today's card, but I do use a greeting from that set later on. But the tulips would also work really well for the example I'm about to show. Off screen, I white heat embossed the daffodil image on white cardstock, and I have that white cardstock piece here in my stamping tool. I also have my gel press over on the right. This time, instead of dabbing the ink pad onto the gel press, I'm dragging it across. This is just another way to apply your inks, and I found that this worked really well when I'm using dye inks. So I much prefer to drag the ink pad, unlike what I showed you before. You'll see that you get to a better blended look faster if you do it this way. Once again, I'm rolling across the gel press with the brayer a few times. Make sure you do it extra. I use 2 colors, a turquoise sea and a blue raspberry, so that's how you see that light to dark. Now I press that down onto my background. Look how beautiful that is right away. But grab another piece of plain cardstock, put that in there, and press it down again to get a lighter version, a second generation ghost-like look. This will be really light. You can see it there. It's light. Let's build it again. So go back to that first one. You could stop here if you wanted to, by the way. Go back to that first one. Drag the same ink pads onto your gel press. And you don't need to overlap there. Notice I don't even meet the 2 colors. The brayer will make sure that it blends across. So I've got my inks down. I'll use the brayer to roll from the bottom up over and over, and notice I start by hanging off the gel press. I just find that gives better results. And this allows our inks to blend from one edge to the other. Now once I'm done with that, I'll press it down. That heat embossed image will resist the ink and leave it on the gel press. But look at the background. Look how smooth and vivid that is. Now I'll go back to that second generation one. Press my gel press down again, and that helps that pop. It really brings more ink to the paper and makes it show up even more. Now I like to do this 3 times, and the 3rd time I usually just use the lightest color and cover the whole thing. and press that down. It just seems to kind of blend it all together, smooth it out, and then also intensify this second generation. So I'll freeze frame this here. The one on the right is very smooth. It's bold. It looks completely different than if you applied that ink with a blending tool. It looks like that color is printed on the top of it. It's beautiful. Then the one on the left is much softer. And you get them both from the same technique. So you're lifting the excess ink from the right and putting it onto the left. Such a fun way to use the gel press. Okay, let's do a few examples where I use the new Gina K Designs Beautiful Birds stamp set. I'm a big fan of birds. I told you that, I think, in my last video. And so I was really excited about these. But I thought it was a great example to demonstrate you can use pretty much any stamp for this technique. We've shown some examples of detailed and ones that are large. Now we'll just do one that's basically a critter and show you it works for that too. For this, I'm using Wild Wisteria, then the Blue Raspberry, and then I'll end with, I think it's Jelly Bean Green. Now these colors are very different, but I'll show you that it works great. I'm starting at the top this time because that's my lightest color. And watch how many times I roll across this, slowly working my way from the top of the gel press to the bottom. The more you do this, the better blending you'll get. The excess ink on your brayer you can roll off onto another piece of cardstock and build up that color for another card. All right, now I'm using the second generation of that to stamp a lighter version too. Look how good that looks with one pass. But I want to build up this color so that my white heat embossed bird that was on that white cardstock stands out more. So I'm doing the same colors of ink, same thing I did, just repeating it for a second pass with the gel press. There I go, rolling across the gel press, starting from the top to the bottom. Press that down, and there we start seeing a bold color. Add the second generation to this, and that intensifies. All right, so I'm going to do a third pass here. This time, I realized there wasn't enough purple showing up at the top, so I'm only doing purple on the top. I start by rolling across that, kind of blend it out there to the middle, and press that down. So there we have our completed background. So you can pass through as many times as you want. I do 3 usually, but if you want it to be even more intense, you can do more than that. Now in this example, I gold heat embossed my bird instead of white heat embossing, and it works just as well. I'm using lighter inks this time. I believe I use Sweet Corn, Wild Dandelion, and then a bubblegum pink color. And so I'm starting at the top and blending down because the yellow is the lightest at the top. Now these are all very light inks to begin with, so it's going to be a much lighter result than before, but look at that beautiful blending. Now the second generation is going to be super light since we started with the lighter inks. So if you want your second generation to be more bold, start with bolder inks in the first place. Now this time I did just the Wild Dandelion and then the pink on the bottom. I switched to Dusty Rose on the bottom, which is a beautiful color from Gina K. And here you see me doing the rolling across to blend from the yellow to the pink. I'll press this down and you can see that color start to build up, and it's so smooth. Now in this case I use yellow and pink, so you're going to have a lot of orange there in the middle. So I continued to add a couple more layers to this. I encourage you to experiment with this. Figure out what works best with whatever inks you have, on whether it's better to start with light ink or darker bold inks, whether it's better to dab the ink pad on or swipe it across. I did find in most cases it was best to swipe it across unless you really wanted a lot of that ink applied, like I did just here. Again, build up those layers until you get the result you like. Now I made a bunch of backgrounds this day, and I just wanted to show you parts of a few more, including the backgrounds I did with the Gina K Designs Flowers for You stamp set. This is a beautiful large detail image, which are very popular right now, and I wanted to demonstrate this technique works well with it. I encourage you to also check out the sentiments in the stamp set. They're fantastic. Great for building up a nice, encouraging message. So here I've already gotten started. I white heat embossed that floral image on white cardstock, and I'm building up layers once again, just like before. This time using mostly Wild Wisteria and some Dusty Rose, and it gives you that purple look together. I continue to add the color to the gel press to build up the bold version, and that lifts the image off of that, and we'll put it on the second generation image. Now, a large floral image like this is one I'm drawn to. I think they're beautiful, but I am not good at coloring. I'm not patient enough for it. So techniques like this are a great way to use these images quickly to create a bold look without having to do the coloring. But it's nice because you can also use it for coloring and get a completely different look. So I've done a few examples where I use stamp sets that have a lot of detail to them, but I wanted to try this gel press lift technique with stamps that have some solid area to them to see if this works with kind of silhouette style stamp. So I'm trying the Gina K Designs Better Together mini stamp set. I white heat embossed that top image twice on white cardstock and went to town with the gel press lift technique. So I first went through and did the gel press lift technique with powder blue and jelly bean green. But as you see here, it's very light. I could have continued and done 2 more passes through of the technique and built it up, but I love bold. I like my first image to be really bold, so I switched inks, and that's okay to do. This time, I'm using Tranquil Teal on the bottom and then Grass Green on the top. But it doesn't matter. Whatever you prefer is best. If you prefer light colors, that's fine. If you prefer the more bold colors, that's fine too. Regardless, I do recommend doing the technique 3 times for each of your backgrounds. That will result in a more smooth look for your first generation and a more noticeable look for your second generation. So you'll see that I repeated this. I actually think I did this one 4 times just to get more blue there on the bottom. So do it as many times as you want to build up that color and get that beautiful look on it that you just can't achieve by doing blending with a brush or an inking tool. So I think with this example, you can see that even images that have some solid area to it really work well with this gel press lift technique. So try whatever you have. And by the way, always wipe your excess ink off the white heat embossing so the white stays vivid. Okay, so now I have a bunch of backgrounds. Some of them are bold with the white heat embossing and some are soft with the second generation prints. But I thought I'd show you how I turn these into cards. Now I'll be honest, I went for simple cards today, where I just trimmed down the background and layered it up a bit and then added a sentiment. You could do more to it if you prefer, but I wanted to show you one of the ways to keep your cards kind of clean and simple after doing those inky backgrounds. For me, it's best to trim down those backgrounds and do a nice matte on it and add it to usually a bold white note card. Now the die set that I really recommend for putting cards together like this is the Gina K Designs Master Layouts 2 die set. It has rectangle dies in it, and the smaller rectangle die cuts a rectangle and has faux stitching on the inside edge. Then the slightly larger rectangle die creates a mat for it. So let me show you. I'm using the rectangle die with the faux stitching on the inside edge, and I'll cut that from my inky backgrounds. So I can easily center it up and get the area that I really want for my background. And it has that faux stitching on the inside edge. Then I use this solid rectangle that's slightly bigger and glue that to the back of it. And check this out, it gives you that slim, tiny little mat to it that looks so professional. You could totally cut a mat to this size, but this takes the measurements out of it. It cuts it to just the right size. I actually cut 3 of those and I'll glue those together behind our inked piece. That'll give it raised dimension. You could use craft foam for this, or you could use foam tape. I prefer to do this. I'm trying to avoid foam tape. I feel like this is more economical and just a better thing to use. And also I can use up any mess up white cardstock pieces I have. Now I'll glue that onto a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and check out this really nice finished professional look you get with the faux stitching, the thin white mat, and then on the bold white note card. Now I'm freezing this here because you're going to get a good laugh. I completed this part, was ready to add the sentiment, and look at what I did. Watch, when I move my fingers, I had dropped a black ink pad on the corner of this. Now, I'm not quitting here. I don't quit when it comes to fun inked backgrounds. What I'll do is I'll peel off that top layer, and later I'll die cut it smaller, maybe with a heart die or a square or a circle, and use it on another card. I'm not letting that go to waste. and I don't want to waste the white note card or the white layers we already have. So this piece here with the ink, I'll set that aside and do something with it later. But now I have another print background that's very similar, because when I get my gel press out and make backgrounds, I do a ton at once. Now on this one, which was done in the same way, I thought I'd add some script stamping over it. This is one of my favorite things to do when I do a gel press background, is I take a script stamp or a dot or a simple stripe and add that on top to give that little bit of extra interest. So now this one, I will glue on top of that layered white card that we made so that it doesn't go to waste. Now while I had that script stamp out, I thought I'd go ahead and stamp it on the background of some of my other inked pieces. But this time, instead of stamping over the entire background, I'm going to do a little bit towards the bottom and a little bit towards the top. And I'll use whatever inks are on my background already. So towards the bottom of this stamp, I'm using turquoise sea because that's what's towards the bottom of my background already. And you can double it up to make it a little bit darker. Then towards the top of my stamp, I'll use Wild Wisteria because that's the ink I use towards the top of that background. I kind of left the middle area uninked, so it would have a bit of like a highlight or glow there in the center. But really the sky is the limit with this. But whenever you add ink or gel press or stamping over heat embossing, I do recommend taking a dry cloth and wiping off the white heat embossing so that it stays crisp and white. But whatever you stamp or stencil on top of these backgrounds, make sure it's not too distracting. This kind of script is just a fun kind of textury stamp, so it worked well. Now in this example, I stamped with white pigment ink on top of it. You won't be able to see it much on our background straight on because we had light inks on this one. But when you tilt it in the light, you kind of see this bit of a glow. That is really cool. So stamping with white pigment ink on top is great too. Okay, let's look at all of the completed cards, and I still have some leftover backgrounds to use. On most of them, I did use that Masters Layout 2 die set from Gina K Designs, but I think there's one or two I didn't. This is the one that I already started earlier. All I did was add the sentiment on top and a few pearls. The Forever, once again, is from the Forever Flowers kit that I showed you at the beginning. I die cut the shadow die for Forever from white cardstock, and then the word Forever itself from black glossy cardstock, which really makes it stand out. Now the word Grateful is also from the kit, and I white heat embossed that on black glossy cardstock and added it on top. Now this is a very simple design, but because I built up layers of die cuts, it really stands out and has a nice finished look to it. Now this card has one of the bold first generation impressions. This is the softer second generation. Look how soft that is. I just love it. I use oval dies on this one. And the sentiment is from the Gina K Spring Tulips stamp set that I showed you earlier. So the reason I use circle die is because I also got an ink smudge on this one. So it was best to change it from rectangle to oval. Now the U is the Gina K Designs U Caps die. And I layered that up with some teal cardstock on top and then a bit of shimmer pen and glossy accents. I did use this script stamp on the soft pulled note card in the background, and you can see that beautiful second generation print. I don't know any other way to get a look this way than doing the gel press ink lift technique. Here's another second generation print, but this time I stamped over the entire piece with that script stamp just to add a little more interest to it. I trimmed it down with the Master Layouts 2 die set from Gina K, but this time upside down so it looked like the floral kind of came out of the top corner. I again used the Forever die cuts, but this time that top layer of the Forever is a teal, and same with the little white heat embossed sentiment strip. By keeping this very simple, I show a lot of that inky background that we created, which I think is really beautiful and would be a shame to cover up. Next up, I have the second generation print that we did using the more solid floral stamps. You can see the soft pool that you get in the background. Remember that just started with white cardstock, and the beautiful print in the middle. I used the Masters 2 die set and used white for the little mat for it, and then a pool note card where I stamped that script stamp. I again used the U caps dies for the U right there in the center. And for the sentiment on top of that, I used the stamp set from the Forever Friends kit that I showed you at the beginning of this video. Okay, next we have the pair of cards that we made with the Tulip stamp. These blues are so beautiful in the background. I think with this first generation print here, you can see how smooth the color is. It doesn't look like you blended it. I mean, it looks like that is blue cardstock that has the gradient from light to dark. But you did it with white cardstock and ink. So gorgeous. On this, I used the Forever and Grateful again from the kit that I showed you at the beginning of the video. And now here is the softer second generation print. I kept this one super simple, did it a horizontal card. And then I just stamped the Gina K Designs Grand Greetings stamp on top of it with black ink and added some pearls. In this case, the background's very soft, so I did a bold teal matte around it. It gives you that fine line of bold color around your center focal point die cut. These came together very quickly, and I really like them, so I plan to go back and make more. Okay, next up we have that large floral outline image from the Flowers for You stamp set, where we have the pink and blue inks in the background. Again, kept it very simple, added that Forever and Grateful. I'm telling you, you're going to see me use that Forever a lot. I think it's one of the best dies of this year so far, and by doing that black glossy cardstock on top, it really pops. Here is the second generation of that same image, much softer looking. So I did white all around this and made my bold color be the word you, so that would stand out. The surrounding you with thoughts and prayers, which I think is a beautiful sentiment, is once again from the Daffodil stamp set that's in that Forever Flowers kit. So now we have a bold version and a softer version of this background. And as a card maker, I really look for techniques that give me 2 for 1 so that I can make more cards to send. All right, let's check out the bird cards that I made. Here's one that's bold and the nice first generation. I kept it very simple and added just the love die cuts. These love dies are in the Little Love bundle from Gina K Designs. I did the shadow again in white and then the word love in black glossy cardstock. There is like a little, I don't know what you call them, a little swash that comes out of the V. You can see on the die. I trimmed it so it didn't cover up as much of my bird on the card. It's easy to alter dies to kind of fit what you're doing. Now here are some second generations that I did. You can see the second generation for the last card over there on the right. Look how soft they are. So beautiful. Remember that started with white cardstock but now has a soft color in the background. These are very simple. I matted with white and put them on a colored note card. And I just stamped with love and prayers on it in black ink and added some pearls. That sentiment is one of my favorites from Gina K Designs. It's part of this Peaceful Floral mini stamp set. She has a lot of sentiments like this that are really unique, very kind, and would work for many different occasions. And that fit perfectly right in that little nook below the branch and the bird. I also had a soft kind of peach color second generation print. On this one, I did the same card design, but I changed up the sentiment to be sending you lots of love from this older Gina K Designs Nurturing Bloom stamp set. Always dig through your older stamp sets. There's great sentiments you can use over and over. The best part is I still have all of these pieces left over to make more cards. I ran out of time to finish them off for this video, but I have them on hand that I can use in the future. That's one of the great things about gel press. All right, there you have lots of cards showing how to use dye inks on your gel press and a fun lift technique that you can do with heat embossing. By the way, the heat embossing lift technique I showed can also be used with oxide inks or distress inks, so give that a try if you want to also. All of the supplies that I use in this video are linked below in my YouTube description. Also in the middle, I'll link to some other videos that might be of interest to you. And I'll link to my blog, which is up here on the top right, in case you want a closer look at any of the images or cards that I zoom through in this video. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you soon.